What is going on, everybody? Happy Wednesday to you. Randy's in the house. Randy, don't miss a darn thing. Randy, I love it. We got Danny in the house. Thank you, guys. I was a little nervous. It's been a while. Lots going on. So I'm like, I don't know if anybody's going to show up. I should have known. I should have banked money. I should have called the sports booking apps, whatever. I'm sure there's lots of weird bets going on these days in the world we live in. So should have put my money on Randy and Danny. Thank you for stopping out, guys. Much love to everybody through the holidays and everything. It's been a hot minute since the routine has returned to the podcast. Apologize about that. I do put some of that on this little kid we got now. It's great. Just learning as we go, boys. And Heather, let's go. Should have known Heather'd be here as well. Thank you for stopping out, everybody. Welcome to the podcast, sponsored by Let's Legalize Wisconsin, but mainly sponsored by the awesome folks at Ignite Dispensary and Cigar. We can say dispensary and cigar because around here when we're on Facebook, we got to cut that out because Facebook, as you see with the Let's Legalize Wisconsin page, they like to watch what we say. So we got Alex in the house. What's up, man? Thanks for swinging by. Appreciate you stopping out. Appreciate everything you're doing for the industry in Wisconsin. Heather, hope everybody's doing well. Just a reminder, Ignite Dispensary is located in, it's been a minute, Milwaukee, Hayward, Spooner. Oh, there's like one or two more. We're going to get that from Bree when she hops on. I'm a little rusty. But if you haven't checked out the drinks yet, they're everywhere. Balanced, Foundry Nation, get it. It's delicious. So much appreciation to them in helping keep this thing going. Phone's blowing up. I forgot to put that on silence, a little rusty. So we're just going to put this here and do that. That usually stops that from making any more noise. All right, let's get this thing rolling. We got an awesome guest who knows a lot about all things cannabis and just and happens to work for one of the awesome outfits here in Wisconsin that really puts quality and concern into the products and doing their due diligence to make sure they're getting you quality products out there. So let's get her on here. Bree, how we doing? Good evening.
Hi, how are you?
Good. We got Waves of Gravy found his way over here from Discord. Thank you, sir, for stopping out. Appreciate you joining the show. Bree, before we get going into some of the cool things we'll get a chance to discuss tonight. If you want to just kind of give the people a quick little, we always like to kind of start with your background. Just like, when did you know, what was your introduction to cannabis? As sketchy as it might have been, we expect that, right? It was illegal when we were probably first learning about it and still is in many forms and fashions. So as much as you want to share about that, but then also if you want to just touch on too, when did you realize, hey, this Ignite Dispensary, I could kind of turn this into some form of my work and passion too? Let's hear a little bit about you, Bree.
Yeah, so most of my career, I was working in behavioral and mental health. So as far as working in the cannabis industry, that's like super new to me. But I first kind of got my interest in like the endocannabinoid system and more of like the biology aspects of it when I was working in mental health. So I smoke weed. I've done it since I was a teenager, like most of us.
Sure.
But I have a couple of chronic illnesses myself. I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and POTS. So
Okay.
as I got older, those things affected me more, and so
Sure.
like I'd feel better when I'd smoke. And at the time, we were all buying it off the street, and so I didn't have control over like sativas, indicas, hybrids, like what kind of
Sure.
terpenes I'm getting in my flower, like all that kind of stuff. And so I noticed that like certain flower made me feel better.
Sure.
Kind of got curious there, just like my own interest, but then working in the mental health field, like it got me kind of like I sparked more interest in it when I started working with patients who had polysubstance abuse disorders,
Sure.
cannabis, along with a PTSD diagnosis, because that didn't make sense to me from just
Right.
like the research and things that I knew about like our endocannabinoid system and cannabinoids and that kind of stuff. So that kind of made me like dive really deep into learning about like more about that, like why do certain cannabinoids do different things to us, and why does our endocannabinoid system respond in certain ways to other systems that are in our body.
Sure.
And I mean, you can apply that to a lot of different
Sure.
symptoms and things like that, but you know, so getting involved with Ignite when I'm not local to like this area,
Okay.
so I moved up here about a year ago, and I started buying my flower over there, and I liked it. I got to know a couple of the guys that work there, just from going
Sure.
in every Sunday when I'd go over there.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of applied on a whim, and I got offered a job, and it worked out great because I have a tendency to just kind of like talk a lot about cannabis, and most people in my life are
No,
like, "Yeah, Brie, okay,
nobody
whatever."
around here does that, Bree.
And then,
Love it.
so being able to like actually talk about it with people who are interested and getting to talk about it all day kind of gets it out of my system too when I'm just
Sure.
dealing with customers and going out on events and being able to kind of get it out of my own system.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I learned too. I had so first of all, that stomach bug that's going around, that's a legit stomach bug, folks. That's no joke. That was rough. So for a couple days I was down and I wasn't out in the public and that, and I didn't realize, I couldn't figure out, like, even after I got over the sickness, I'm like, something's still wrong. What's wrong? And I couldn't really figure it out. And then today was kind of my first day really getting back into it. Like I was getting back into it in the house and that kind of stuff over the weekend, some small errands. But today was the first day I got to like wear this in public, make a couple stops, and people are coming back up asking those cannabis questions. I'm like, that's what's been missing. The passion, the advocacy, the wanting to do more to help with what's out there. So I think it's really neat how you came across the opportunity to join the Ignite team. Shout out to, they got a couple folks in the comments here shouting you out as well. We got Camille with Ignite. Again, I think it's really neat that you found, again, there are people trying to do it the right way and doing their best like every step of the way. And Ignite has definitely fit that bill. There's a reason I stick around with anytime I get a chance. Like we check in usually once a month, and again, I think cannabis is a community thing, and when you find people who are in it for the right reasons, you just build that community, and it's awesome to see. It's awesome to see that you were able to find a way to be a part of that team. That's really cool, and especially bringing in some kind of a medical background and understanding. That's really what got me started in advocacy, was just seeing, because at the time I was in a overseeing 5 retail stores, and that was awesome. But it was when I started seeing people come in for their medicine that I started to realize, like, whoa, I need to do more to try to help as many people as I can, because this is, it's a lot of people are really brave to step out of their comfort zone to come into these stores here, especially here in Wisconsin, where there's a lot of confusion with hemp and all that kind of stuff. So really something to see that you have found a way to the cannabis team. So shout out to you for searching. You might not even known you were searching, but we know you were because you're here, and that's awesome. So welcome to the cannabis world of Wisconsin. Really glad you found a place with Ignite and are able to, again, it's almost like cannabis. Heather says this really well. Cannabis is very social, and especially when you have that passion to help others, it'd be really easy to just sit back and be like, well, I got my stuff, I'll hook up my family, or kind of explain to my family how this could help them. But I think, just like you were explaining, there's a lot of potential, and you can't just like, they say it is what it is, there's nothing I can do about it. Putting your name out there and your livelihood, that's pretty awesome to see. So kudos to you on that front. So while we're on this awesome topic, which is the endocannabinoid system, when you were explaining the differences that we run into, like, I can't think of another, I don't want to call it product, plant, consumable. When we talk about consumables, right? Like usually it's like bananas, some might be a little ripe, some might not be. But for the most part, a banana tastes like a banana, and you probably get very similar nutrients. But isn't it so crazy that this plant has, you're talking indica, sativa, and then, but when we're talking the medicinal benefits and terpenes, right? There's so many different variations. It's just so mind boggling that it all stems back to this one plant. That we just see kind of an overabundance at times when we walk into a store. It's hard to be like, well, when I was at the other place, here's what worked. How do people remember the names of some of these strains, that kind of thing? So I guess where it comes down to is, in simple terms for listeners who might not be familiar about it, can you kind of explain the endocannabinoid system to them? Because I think, when we find, like you're saying, a strain that works really well for me, it's typically because it's the terpenes or something that's interacting with my endocannabinoid system. Is that what that system's about, or could you just kind of break that down for us?
Right. So our endocannabinoidal system is really, like, in basic parts, made up of two parts. So our endocannabinoidal system is part of all of the systems within our body.
Okay.
We have the receptor part of it. So we have CB1 and CB2 receptors that that soak up the cannabinoids. And then we have a production side where we actually make endocannabinoids. So there are two different cannabinoids. There are phytocannabinoids and then endocannabinoids. A phytocannabinoid comes from a plant. That's an external source of cannabinoid. And the endocannabinoid is made by our endocannabinoidal system. So we have two of those. There is, well, I mean, in simple terms, there's two of those. Those kind of have variations of themselves, but
Sure.
there's 2-AG and anandamide. Anandamide is the most basic, is the most common one that our bodies produce.
Okay.
So what happens is our endocannabinoidal system is responsible for creating homeostasis. So it's responsible for creating balance within our system. So when something becomes out of balance, your endocannabinoidal system is going to respond to that. It's going to produce, you're still going to produce those anandamides, and your body's going to try to soak those up internally. You
Gotcha.
can medicate that system with phytocannabinoids. So you can kind of change that system
Okay.
based on the phytocannabinoids that you consume. So you see a lot of like THCA and THCO and THCV and THCP and all these different variants that are being sold of different forms of THC. So each one of those cannabinoids fit differently into our cannabinoidal receptors. So that's
Gotcha.
why they
So
cause a
different
different
puzzle pieces.
reaction. Yep.
Gotcha.
So they cause a different reaction to our receptors because they fit into our receptors differently. Essentially, we have CB1 and CB2 receptors throughout our body. But CB2 receptors are more prevalent in your body, and CB1 receptors are more prevalent in your brain and your nervous system. So reference quick is like to tie it back to mental health. Excuse me. So like if someone has anxiety, having like a higher THC is going to antagonize more of those CB1 receptors. So part of the nervous system. For a lot of people, the nervous system is where you get some of those psychosomatic effects from anxiety. So like when you get that shakiness, the nervousness, the upset stomach, like a lot of that stuff kind of it comes from your nervous system, like it's having a panic. And so
Gotcha.
your endocannabinoidal system is going to come in and try to balance that out. But by adding that THC, any delta product is going to antagonize those CB1 receptors, which is just going to make that worse. It's going to make it feel
Gotcha.
more intense. We're like putting something like CBD or a lower THC content, higher CBD, CBG. So it's more in that body. It'll take those symptoms away. So
Gotcha.
we can't say that like something is medical,
It's
right? Because we're not
sure.
doctors.
Right. Right.
We're not clinicians.
Right.
But but what I like to try to like get across to people is like when they come in and they say like I'm trying to deal with my anxiety, I don't know what to do. A lot of times I'll ask what the symptoms of their anxiety are because we can
Sure.
treat the symptoms of the anxiety, or we can try to, find something that works to treat the symptoms of the anxiety, but not the anxiety directly. So if the
Sure.
anxiety might cause one person to lay awake at night, well, we might have a gummy that might help with that.
Sure.
Or like it might cause someone else to like not want to eat. Well, we have, I mean, we can provide something that'll give you an appetite. So it's more about treating like those symptoms versus treating the actual like condition. When people come in and say stuff like that to us, that's how I look at it.
That makes sense too, and it's I the saying when I hear it, it really clicks every time I hear it, and that's everybody's body is different, or
Mhm.
everybody's different, which is so true because kind of like you're saying, some people this might help them sleep, this might, so it really kind of takes that process and almost like again it. Some people like roll their eyes, but if you truly want to find your way with cannabis, you should journal. It's a journey. There's so many
Mhm.
different, like we're just starting to understand parts of it, and we still keep finding more parts, and it's just going to probably keep doing that for as long as we're around, I would think, because it's such a dynamic plant. When it comes to terpenes, do terpenes, okay, I'm gonna go out on a limb here. Real quick, Heather says my doc tells me to smoke one. There you go, that's a good doc.
That's a good
uh
doctor. Ethan.
that helps a lot of folks. So do terpenes, pardon my not super knowledge of the plant that we're talking about, but do terpenes interact with our endocannabinoid system as well?
Right. So we have what's called a TRPV1 receptor, and the TRPV there's actually a series of TRPV receptors, but the TRPV1 receptor is pretty integral into like our endocannabinoidal system. So your TRPV1 receptor is going to be the one that accepts the terpenes. So terpenes
Gotcha.
are going to be like the smell of the plant, the taste of the plant, like when you smoke it. It's gonna they're gonna be the best way I can describe it usually to people is like when you smell a flower, like an actual flower, in the center you have that pollen that has a scent to it.
Yeah.
For cannabis, that's on the outside of the plant. So when you see all the little
Sure.
hairs on the outside of the plant, you see that the little sparklies when you're kind of looking at it in the light and stuff, those are
But why
trichomes.
is it sparkling? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so those are trichomes, and that's
Yeah.
where all of the terpenes live. So that's where,
Okay.
like, if you're, smoking your keef stash, it's going to be real flavorful because that's going to be a lot of that that gets
Ah,
moved off your plant
concentrated
down into the
terpenes.
bottom. Right, it's going to be
Gotcha.
really rich in terpenes. But so yeah, like our TPRV1 receptor is the one that kind of accepts that, and then it helps the cannabinoids like do their job. So, for example, like there are terpenes in almost all plants.
Sure.
Sort of a fun fact about terpenes.
Sure.
They exist in almost all plants. So any smell or so one that I like to point out to people is linalool because most people are familiar with that smell, whether they realize it or not when I say that word.
Also, that's just
Um,
a cool word.
it's
You say it
right.
again. I always say it wrong. Can you say it again? Lin-
Linalool.
Linalool. Got it.
Yeah.
I'll mess it up
Um,
in 2 seconds.
so that's the terpene that's present in lavender, but it's also
Okay.
present in cannabis. So
Sure.
when when you smell something that's lavender, if you're doing aromatherapy or you have like a bath bomb, they're usually telling you that they're for relaxation because our TPRV1 receptor interprets that lavender smell as something that should calm our system down and relax us. Well, when you smoke flower that has linalool as a terpene in it, it's going to have that effect on our body just the same, in addition to the cannabinoids.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And that's where, again, when we're talking about the different strains and stuff, it's so mind boggling to actually sit down and understand. This one has more, don't tell me now, lenilul.
Mhm. Yep.
Lenilul. So this one has more lavender essentially in it, where this one can have more pinene in it, or
Right.
it just
Right. And so
mind
pinene,
boggling.
right, is going to be the same like smell as like a pine. So like when you
Yep.
smell that flower, it's going to have kind of that pine scent to it. And the same thing goes for like myrcene is a really common terpene that's found in flower or cannabis flower, hemp
Sure.
flower. Um, and myrcene is actually the most prevalent terpene in hops. So that's why flower can sometimes have that like beer kind of smell to it because that terpene exists both in hops and in cannabis flower.
Gotcha. Cool. That's interesting.
So then when we
Um,
talk, can I just
yeah, no,
add
absolutely.
a
Yeah,
little
yeah,
bit to that? So then when we talk about chemivores, like when people are talking about like, is it an indica? Is it a flower? Or is it a indica sativa or hybrid flower? What they're the way that works is they take these terpenes and they make like a profile out of it. And
sure.
then the terpene profile determines what chemivore that falls into. So if
Okay.
it's heavy on terpenes that are going to be sedative and make you relax, it's going to be identified as an indica.
Okay.
Whereas if you have like lemon, something that's going to awaken your senses and stimulate like your TPRV1 receptor, then that's going to be more of a sativa. So it
Sure.
depends on what the profile is.
Right. Nope. Good point. Joe says hops smell like cannabis. I've heard that before. Can't
Yep.
remember last time I actually got to smell hops. So, Joe, I'll take
It's
your word for that.
myrcene.
There you go. Mercy. That's right. Okay.
Myrcene.
Uh, Machine. What are we kind of touched on that one? How does your mental health background? How do you use that to inform your approach to cannabis education and product recommendations? I'm going to guess that's something that, again, when we talk about the industry as a whole, we can't be like, oh yeah, this is going to help with. But obviously, there are, I'm assuming, many different times where you'll run into being able to possibly help somebody with symptoms that they're having with some kind of, I mean, because I know for me, there's different strains. I keep one on hand that I just know when I'm in this one mood, it's the one thing that just helps me. That would be Northern Lights, and it could also be because it was back in my college days. Bree, if you want to hang up off this, you can just let me know. You don't have to throw
No,
your
no,
phone
you're
around.
good. I just
No,
like
I'm just
lost my
kidding.
little like thing I was propping my phone up against, so we're
No,
good.
you're good. You're good.
You guys can see
So
my
yeah,
notes
I guess
now.
nope, all good. What does that look like for you as far as the background that you have and how you're able to inform people to the cannabis education and product recommendations?
Yeah, so I think that like working in mental health, like you spend a lot of time observing, like you spend a lot of time observing the way people like act and like what they're saying and kind of interpreting that. And so I feel like I kind of translate that into like when someone comes in and they're talking to me about their anxiety, like I want to know more about your anxiety. Like how does your anxiety affect you? Like what are those symptoms? Like how I'd mentioned before, that we're trying to manage so that it can help them. Because like I don't want to just assume somebody wants to take a 30 milligram live rosin gummy when they've
Sure.
never tried cannabis before. So
Exactly.
I want to know
Right.
more about like their experience and like what they've tried before, and have they tried CBD, have they tried CBN, CBG, based on what their symptoms are, before I just assume that they're going to want something with Delta 9 in it.
And real
But
quick, Bree, do you run into something that I had run into quite a bit, but now this is a couple years ago, so I'm just kind of seeing if it's still that way. One of the things that I'd run into is people would try products from a place and then go to a different place and then kind of find out, well, maybe that other place, like one of the reasons I really appreciate Ignite Dispensary is I know that they, again, it's a quality control in a industry where there's no quality control required. So do you often, like, how do you best approach that from the standpoint of, do you run into, well, I tried 20 milligram THC and it didn't do anything? Do you still try to sometimes, well, where did you get that? Was it 20 milligrams of total THC, or do you find that most consumers come in and they're pretty well educated on what they had and like able to show you? Because I would run into a lot of misinformation out there or mislabeling at times. Is that still something you run into, or?
yeah, it's funny. I was just having this conversation with Camille earlier today.
Okay.
Um, so I live in Minnesota myself, and so like over here, I had a friend of mine buy some gummies like locally to them, and they were like, "But it doesn't say what it is on them." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And I was like, "Well, what's the dose?" And she was like, "It doesn't say." And I was like,
Hmm.
"What do you mean it doesn't say? Like it
Right.
should say what it is." And
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
"Well, what is the where's the QR code on it?" And she's like, "There isn't one." And I was like, "Okay, rule of thumb, never buy a product that doesn't have a QR code on it or doesn't come with a lab report, because you don't know what you're ingesting. Like you don't know what you're
Right.
taking." So like for us, like inside the store, like we have a binder that has lab reports in it for our products, so that like if
Sure.
you want to know what that cannabinoid profile looks like we can show it to you. But
Sure.
all of our products also have a QR code on them, and that QR code takes you to our website so that you can find that information from your phone if you want to,
Sure.
you know. And so
That's
like
awesome.
it shows a sense of transparency. Like I've had people like hand me products from like Michigan before too, and then I go to scan the QR code and
That's so
there's no link.
frustrating.
Like
Yeah.
it's just a broken link, and then it makes you wonder, like, was there ever a report attached to this, or like
Right.
what's it, like what is it, you know?
Right. Yeah, it's got to be
So
frustrating because so then what's the best way to get people involved is kind of or like to get them on a regime, I'm assuming, is that like, okay, well, let's just kind of start fresh here. We'll start low with this and then report back in a couple days, or how do you kind of navigate that sometimes when you're not knowing if people have unfortunately been able to find a quality product?
well, so I mean, we do a lot of like free sample stuff. Like if I like somebody's coming in and they're just not sure about a gummy, and they're just like they've never had it before and they really don't know, but they for sure they want to buy this other thing, I'll be like, "Oh, okay, well, why don't you take one of our 10 milligram gummies home, cut it in half or cut it in fourths, and like, you know what I mean, just kind of give them that opportunity to try it and see what
Sure.
happens." I do that a lot with like our salves and stuff too. Like our muscle rub is amazing. And so anytime I see anybody come in and they're like limping or anything, I'm like, "Did you get hurt? Like, tell me what happened.
Right.
Like,
You're like one of those
can I offer
commercials. Were
you
you hurt on
some
the workforce? Or yeah,
can I offer
we
you
have a
some CBD?"
not compensation, but we've got some balm for you.
So like, I mean, I like to try to do that. Like even if somebody in just in passing is talking to me about how they were at the gym and they pulled their muscle, I'm like, "Here, let me take a sample," because I don't know, they might come back tomorrow and be like, "That's amazing. I want a whole jar of it." You know? I mean, just to try to get them to be able to have an opportunity to try it.
Sure.
The hard thing with CBD itself is CBD is a long game, right? Like if you're using CBD in
Sure.
that medicinal way, like for most people, it's recommended that you're on it for at least 3 weeks before you make a judgment about it, because
Sure.
it takes time for your body to be able to utilize that CBD to the best of its ability, because you're feeding your endocannabinoidal system and it's going to like soak it up and absorb it, but it's going to like shoot it off to the biggest crisis first. And so like as you give it time, your body learns to process it like more efficiently. And
Right.
then you start to like see the benefits of it. You start to see the long-term benefits of it.
Makes sense. Makes sense. It again, it's a journey. You almost need that approach with people, and kind of like you're explaining too. That's good to hear that. Understanding of that. Start low, go slow, and it's so key that people understand that make this take a couple days because people get so excited that they want this to work and then they'll try that quarter of a gummy, but then they wait an hour, and then that's everyone's worst nightmare because then you take that second half, but then as soon as you take it, it starts kicking in the other half, right? Like, so again, folks, patience is key, especially when we're talking about people that are new to this. We want them to find their sweet spot, and like Bree is explaining, especially with CBD, that is definitely a journey. But once you're able to understand that and you give it that try, it's quite literally been life changing for many people. And again, we're learning more and more. Nobody was trying to misinform people when CBD first came out and said, "Oh yeah, it should work right away. Here's a low dose." Like now we do higher dosages. Like we're learning all the time. So if you tried something a couple of years ago, if you got somebody knowledgeable like Bree or at a local place or wherever you go to find your cannabis, don't always just assume that you're going there to find something to relax. You can find things, most people, I should say, right? We can't guarantee it, but most people can find a lot of different reliefs from this plant. And don't be afraid to take some time in that journey. It's not one size fits all, but that's almost in the beauty of it. Real quick, we've got Gravy. That's a great question. We're going to touch on that last because that gets going. The whole Delta 9, THCA, and THC. We're going to touch on that, but you got to stick around if you want to talk about it. I like getting that one going. Lando says got some great garlic runts THCA the other day for the first time, and I'm loving it. That sounds like one I could get behind. I've had runts before. I always had good luck with that myself as far as that goes. When we were talking, Bree, can you share some of the mental health benefits associated with cannabinoids and terpenes? I'm guessing there's a couple.
Well, so I'm gonna go on a little tangent for a hot second.
Let's go.
So
buckle up. She might throw her phone again.
So, like what really interested me, like I said earlier about like when I was working in mental health, I was working at a treatment facility is what happened. I was working for so I used to work for the Fort County Crisis Response Team in central Minnesota. So I would do like the crisis calls going out to mental health emergencies and that kind of thing. But I also worked as a care coordinator in their IRT, which is an intensive residential treatment facility. So they treated both co-occurring disorders. You had to have both a substance abuse disorder and a mental health like diagnosis in order to be treated there.
Okay.
And so when I was there, part of my job was to when new patients would come in, I would be the one to sit down with them and do a lot of assessments with them, gathering information so that we can give them appropriate diagnoses. The way that it works to get a diagnosis is those questionnaires that you fill out and the questions you answer when you meet with a practitioner like that then get translated into the DSM-5. So the DSM-5 is the manual that is used to diagnose.
Okay.
And so when I was doing that, I was getting, it was interesting to me how many times I would see somebody get diagnosed with PTSD and a poly substance abuse disorder, cannabis.
Sure.
Because in my mind, that like didn't make sense to me as from what I knew about the endocannabinoid system. So we know, like, it's like this has been known for a while, that PTSD, when you have high levels of cortisol, right, like in a traumatic experience, your endocannabinoid system is going to respond. It's going to try to balance that system. So you have high levels of cortisol, your endocannabinoid system's over here producing cannabinoids and trying to balance.
Yep, trying to find a balance.
Right, it's going to try to create that homeostasis for you.
Sure.
So at some point, that will become so far out of whack that you start to create, since you can't make more cannabis like on a dime or cannabinoids on a dime, you will make more cannabinoidal receptors. And that's your body's attempt to like find a cannabinoid somewhere to soak up.
Gotcha.
So we know that when someone has PTSD, they probably have more endocannabinoidal receptors. So treating them is going to be different than treating somebody who doesn't have that, who has less endocannabinoidal receptors. So, and where I get like extra interested in it, right, is when you talk about those cortisol levels, because right now, the climate of the world, right, like everybody's stressed all the time. Like there's always a stressor. There's a work stressor, there's a kid stressor, there's a family stressor. Like there's all these things that cause us stress. There's all these things that raise our cortisol levels. And depending on how our body reacts to that cortisol, your endocannabinoidal system might be just pumping out new receptors.
Gotcha.
So it's almost like a trauma response then, even though it's just like a long-term stress. And so that's why it's when people come in and we say, oh well, everybody's body's different, that's completely true. And there's a reason that we say that, because everybody's endocannabinoidal system really is different, not just because it's different, but because it depends on how your body responds to stress. It depends on how your body handles trauma. It depends on how your body responds to those kind of things, just to
And it
begin with.
sounds like it could depend too, where like, is it my understanding? I think I remember hearing this, and because when we're talking about these different levels, right? So if your stressors are really high, so this is off this here, right? So some weeks or some days, this might be the terpene you need, but then the next week you might need that terpene to kind of balance
Right.
because those receptors. Oh wow, okay,
Right. So when we were talking about the TRPV1 receptors, right?
yep,
So your
for the terpenes.
Your TRPV1 receptor is kind of a fun little thing. So when you smell flower, I'm sure you've experienced this before. You smell one flower and you're like, "Ooh, that smells really good." And then you smell another flower and you're like, "Oh, nope, nope, not that one. Like that's not for me."
Sure.
It's literally your TRPV1 receptor is smelling those terpenes, and then it's pumping positive chemicals into your brain to tell you like that,
Ah,
because
okay.
your endocannabinoidal system wants that one.
Ah,
So your
okay.
TRPV1 receptor is responding to those terpenes and is telling you, like, this is the flower we want to smoke. Like, those are the cannabinoids and the terpenes we want, because of like
So
your body smells it.
so deli style is a good thing because then you
Right. So
can
like,
smell and your body be like, hey, that's what we need. Get that right there. Like help you
right.
make that decision
Yeah.
essentially.
I do that
Okay.
with people all the time when they come in and they're just like, we've got like 7 strains of THCA flower, and they're like, I don't know what I want. Well, just
Let your
smell
body
them. Like
tell you.
we'll go down the line. You can smell them. Which one smells best to you? Like take that one home, because that's probably the one that will be the best for you
That's what your
in that
body says.
moment,
Okay.
though, right? Because your TRPV1 receptor can have a different response based on, again, like you said, like based on how much stress you're under, or how, like, if something is like injured inside of your body, right? Your body's going to be having a response to that. So now
Yep.
it's trying to create that homeostasis. So now it's going to try to figure out where it can get some cannabinoids from. And then
Sure.
that's where all these cannabinoids come into play, right? Like one cannabinoid is going to be better for inflammation versus one that's going to be better for relaxation.
Yep. And that's like kind of like Camille's saying, it's so cool that our body literally tells you what you want, right? It's again, deli style would be huge for that. And then Heather says that's why we grow 5 different strains. That would make perfect sense. That's also why like I keep those couple of strains around where I'm like, that one's my medicine. I just
Yep.
it when I feel that way, I know it. And then now you are right now that I think of it, when I pop that thing open, boy, she smells really good that day when I'm looking for it. You know what I'm saying? My body's like, oh, there it is. There's the Northern Lights.
Mm-hmm.
We got the blue skunk. That was our Ignite
Yep.
chill for the night. So, oh wait, we're not on Facebook, so I can talk. I can show it real quick. Zuck catches me the moment I do that. He's shuts me down. So, Zuck, you're not here, so go away. No, right on. Let's go into the next question we had submitted for you here. What are some of the misconceptions you often hear about hemp or cannabis, and how do you address those?
So I had CBD that doesn't work. That's pretty common to hear, unfortunately.
Sure.
Because and it's kind of funny because I actually just ended up watching. I got myself sucked into a video from like Europe about how CBD doesn't work the other night on YouTube, because I was like, what?
You're right.
And now I need to know what you're gonna say about it.
Yeah, right. What's your angle
And
here?
basically the whole speech that the guy gave, right, was about how people take it and there's no effects from it, and like was talking about an analysis that was done where they were given one dose. And I'm like, well,
Oh,
yeah, that makes perfect sense that you saw no results from it, right? Like, so what you're reporting on is skewed data, because
yeah.
you didn't give it an adequate amount of time to actually produce a result. When you start taking a new medication, you often need time for your body to build it up in your
Cool.
system and for it to learn how to process it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
It's no different when you start taking cannabis, or like any form, whether it's
Sure.
CBD or it's THC. Like your body does need time to be able to adjust to it and figure out how it's going to process it.
Nope, that makes sense, and that's probably one that, again, I feel like even well, I guess I can't. No, I feel like even 2 years ago when I first got into the industry, I don't even remember really, well, at least being told. And again, that's the unfortunate thing is there's no like unified program for people to all be on the same page to help educate, or for the consumer to go to find out, regardless of the shop they go to have like this unified education, which I think is just huge. But I feel like even 2 years ago, I don't really remember being told or hearing much chatter about it takes a few weeks for this to kick in. I know definitely when CBD first came out, there was, it was thought like 10 milligrams was plenty, and now I think it's definitely more than that. So I can see where that's the tough part for not only for the shop, for the person behind the counter, for the end user. Let us do the research. Let us work as a community. But no, everything has got to be so. We don't even know if these shops will be around and tomorrow. It's the tough part. So I think we need to embrace cannabis. We need to make it a part of our communities. It's already here. Let's let education lead the way instead of fear from our politicians and such, and really get to the potential that we can be unlocking, and people like you are taking the time to figure out. So kudos to you for taking the time to figure that out, and all those in the industry. I still wish there was a better word than bud tender. When I started out, bud tender was cool. So I'm like, yeah, that's cool. It fits. But like, it's so much more than just, you are tending to the bud, right? Like, it's not a false name, but the people who take their job seriously as a bud tender definitely deserve a way more cool title than that, because you are potentially helping somebody better their lives. This isn't
Mhm.
just, not everyone in the industry is doing it just kind of for fun, or to get a discount on their plug.
Right. Right.
There's a lot of people who care, especially in Wisconsin, where there's some really murky waters and lack of regulation and stuff. So sometimes you got to go to a few places so you find somebody who really cares. But there are people out there, so take the time to find those people, and we need to stick together. Um, when it comes to Ignite, what kind of products do you guys all offer? I think I know those, but and actually, I just ran out of my burnout mix. That was a new one for
Oh
me.
my
But
God,
what
the burnout mix. No, those new snack mixes are like my, swear to God, my favorite thing. Nikki is a goddess for making those.
I would
I'm a,
say so. Shout out
I
to
love
Nikki.
salty snacks, like the gummies I can pass on, but I will literally just sit and eat the crackers and watch
Yeah,
TV.
no, that's awesome. So what is the lineup? What does it look like? And kind of maybe start from like most popular, just in your time there at the store, and kind of work your way down real quick.
Yeah, so our gummies are probably one of our best sellers. So we sell gummies in 10, 20, 30 milligram, and then 30 milligram live rosin, chemivore specific. So the
Okay.
live rosins come in a sativa hybrid and an indica.
Okay.
So those live rosins are probably our best selling gummy that, we really try to stick to only carrying our products. Obviously, we carry Balanced and Foundry
Sure.
um, stuff too, but we do a few other like smaller kind of local brand things sort of a thing, but we really try to stick to just like our products. We can guarantee our products, so
Sure.
it's easier to do
Well,
that.
if I remember, you guys have a grow, and then are your edibles from that grow? Is that how that works? I guess I don't even know for sure what that looks
um
like.
I guess I'm the wrong person probably to ask. I know, yes, like to some degree, but I don't know like
The
how
super
all of
specifics, I
yeah, like I don't
suppose
know how
that
all
would
of our
be a
like
lot to
cultivation
understand.
stuff really like works. That's not like my department.
Sure. I just had saw a comment, and no, you're good. You got enough to remember. So gummies,
Oh yeah,
boom.
gummies. We've got gummies. We've got them in like 10/10s too, where they're like a 1-to-1. So somebody who doesn't want
Okay.
to get that high feeling but wants still that symptom management relief, they could try like something like that. We also have like CBG, CBN. We've got like a variety of different combinations of those too. So like when we're
Sure.
talking about like pain management versus like anxiety versus like those kind of things, that's kind of helps us. Like when you tell us there's your symptoms, that helps
Sure.
us be able to identify like what would be helpful.
Yep. Boom.
Um, and especially letting us know too that you like if you don't want to feel high, like it's totally fine to walk in and say like I don't want to get
Right. I know
high.
people are afraid of that sometimes, and it's like you don't have to be high when you're feeling
Right.
good, man.
Right. Like we can help you feel better without getting you high. So
Sure.
it's okay to come in and say that. But yeah, no. So edibles, we've got quite an array of edibles. You never just talking about the snack packs. Those are new. Those are super good. Crackers, pretzels, sort of like it's a snack mix, but sort of like a Chex mix. And then
Yeah.
yeah, that burnout mix that's got like M&Ms and M's and all that good stuff in it. So
Oh yeah.
those are super tasty. Um, everything, so a lot of gummies. We got everything from like glass to cigars and all that good stuff. But otherwise,
Sure.
mainly people come in for our flour. At
Sure.
the Superior store, we sell a lot of flour,
Sure.
like a lot of flour. We had wedding cake come in one day. I think it went out at like 9 in the morning. It was gone by 8 p.m.
Oh
Full
wow.
pukey, just gone.
Gotcha. Okay.
And it's not like it was our only strain. We had like a whole
Sure.
shelf of them.
No, you'll have that once in a while, man. You'll have one when the people know what they want.
it just flies off the shelf sometimes. But so we sell a lot of THCA flower. We carry THCP, Delta 9, and our CBD flower too. It sells really well. We've got a handful of regulars who come in and buy like a half at a time and stuff. Like they really love our CBD flower.
That's awesome.
We sell that all in pre-rolls and stuff too. Like you can come in and just grab a pre-roll. You don't have to
Sure.
grab loose flower. Our own vapes. So we like do our own. We have 1 and 2 grams now in all three chemivores. So we've got a strawberry cough is our sativa, our
Ooh,
Skittles is our hybrid, and then blackberry Kush is our indica.
okay.
I'm an indica girly. I love our blackberry Kush one.
Fair. Fair. Fair.
But like an important thing I feel a lot of times when I'm like in the store talking about those products is we sell vapes that come from like other states and stuff too, and a lot of times it's important to like just for yourself like know what's in those products, because sometimes what they'll do is they'll advertise it as like THCA. They'll say it's a THCA cart, but then it's like mostly Delta 8, and then they like
Yeah,
pack in a
THCA
little.
is like 0.3%, and it's like, yo, that's
Well,
not
and then
even
they
like the top 10 ingredient.
Well, right, and then they like put the like just a little here and a little of THCP and a little of THCB just so that you get that like high feeling. Where like ours is a cleaner product. Like there's not going to be anything like added to it or anything like that. So
Sure.
I try to let people know that too when they come in, especially if it's their first time in the store, because I don't want them to leave with a product and it not be what they were looking for.
Sure. Nope, that's awesome. And you kind of got the whole landscape.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's really a fun job because we get like new products in all the time too. So like you get to like test products and stuff.
Okay. Nope,
um,
that's awesome.
but we get like like people sometimes I don't think realize either that like there's so many cannabinoids. Like there's more than 100 different cannabinoids in cannabis and hemp. So like one like THCV, like a lot of people think that like, oh, if I take a gummy I'm gonna get the munchies, or if I smoke I'm gonna get the munchies. Like THCV suppresses your appetite. So there's
Right.
like now we're learning that we can like we can isolate these cannabinoids and we can do different things with them. So
Sure.
it's
There's many
fascinating the more and
different,
more that they
right.
do that.
Exactly. Again, we keep learning. Real quick, Camille plugged in the information for us. Ignite has invested in a hemp processing facility. Gummies are made in the Twin Cities. The hemp is from our Midwest farmers. Let's go. That's what I'm talking about. A little love to the folks out here in the Midwest.
Shout out to
Um,
Camille.
yeah, thank you for helping in that category. Real quick, I had heard some rumblings that you have a training presentation. Can you talk a little bit about the one you created on terpenes? What inspired you to do that? And what are you hoping people will take away from that?
Yeah, so one of my very first, so I have like when I work at the store, I have a manager at the store, but then when I do community outreach stuff, I work with Camille. Like she's my boss that way. So,
Sure.
when I first had a meeting with her, when I first started with the company, I was talking to her about terpenes and how we had this strain, and I think it was like a cherry gelato or something. And it was like a lower THC potency, but the terpenes in it were great and it had a great CBG content in it. And I was like, if anybody asks, like this flower is going to be really great for anxiety. It's got
Sure.
low THC content, high CBG content. It had a great terpene profile. Like it was perfect for anxiety. So I mentioned that to her, and then she was like, I never would have even thought of that. Like, to like put those with like symptoms, or
Piece
like
it
with
together. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
something. Yeah. So then her and I were talking about it, and she was like, somebody should totally make a training on terpenes. And then I don't know, like 2 months later, it was just something we talked about. She was like, so you're making that thing on terpenes, right? And I was like, yep, I'm on it.
That's awesome.
I'm on it. But it's
Sure.
great because I will spend like an actual Friday night just like reading like clinical research that's done on like terpenes and cannabinoids and stuff, because the more you know. And
Yep.
I like it like reading multiple reports and stuff, because the more times I read the same thing, the more it feels true to me. You know what I
Sure.
mean? Like if there's like four different scientists that come with the same results after they've tested a terpene, well, four times in a row that was the same information, and it was
Sure.
like done in a clinical setting. And you know what I mean? So I try to make sure that I also take information from like reputable sources and stuff, but I would totally
Sure.
nerd out and do that anyway. And then I got to be able to, like take all this information and lay it out. But so there is one version of it that will be, I think, available to the public at some point.
Okay.
And then there's going to be a secondary version of it that's just a little bit more detailed, a little bit more
A little more
intricate.
boring. Come on, say it, Bree. A little more
Well,
boring, right? You got to get all
sad.
that right.
Well, no, it's
No,
not
that's
boring.
fair.
It's just sometimes what I like. I have a hard time. Like it's hard for me to not talk over people's heads. Like because
Yeah.
I know how it works in my head. So then I'll say things and I'll be like, oh crap, I
And
have
you
to
try
like
to break
backtrack
it
and
down.
explain
No, I
four
get
other
it. I get
things.
it. Sure. No, that's awesome. And that's just how that should work, though. Just like when you go to school, you read the textbook, but then when you're on the floor and you only got so much time. So, oh, we got a question. Heather says, "Can you explain CBN?"
Yeah, so
Ooh,
CBN is going to be similar to like CBD and CBG. It's going to be more like interactive with your CB2 receptors. So typically, as just a general rule of thumb, anything that's got like a CB to beginning of the cannabinoid, it's going to probably be more interactive with your CB2 receptors, where something that starts with a THC or a delta is going to be more interactive with your CB1 receptors. So
okay,
that's like your brain, your nervous system. CB2 is your body. So
okay,
CBN is going to help you relax. It's going to help slow your systems down. Not to be too much, but so we have endocannabinoid receptors in our mitochondria. So for all of us who took 10th grade science, that's the powerhouse of the cell, right? So us as
well, who took 10th grade science and paid attention? Because I took 10th grade science, but I still don't know what you're talking about.
well, so that's on a like that is like on a cellular level, we have endocannabinoid receptors like
Okay,
on our very cells. So when you are putting those cannabinoids into your system, they're going to do different things, right? And so just fun fact, right? So typically when your body is sending information, right, you have a pre-synapse that sends information to the cell. There's only one system, like all of your information comes from presynapse to the cell. Your body takes that information and does something with it. So like I was talking about earlier, if there's like a trauma response, this presynapse is going to start sending information out to your body that it needs to start responding to trauma.
sure,
Well, when you ingest cannabinoids, it's going to actually send that information from the cell back to the presynapse. It's the only
okay,
part of that system that actually works backwards. So now what's going to happen is those cannabinoids come into that receptor and then they slow down the information coming out of the presynapse. It actually changes the information being sent out to the
ah,
cell.
okay.
So that's why I say like these different cannabinoids can have different effects because it's changing the information that's being sent to the cell.
So real quick, that makes so much sense. And I just heard, darn it, I can't remember who I was talking to yesterday or today. So within the last 48 hours, somebody explained this to me, and I didn't even think of it because CBN is also degraded THC over time, right? So, like my understanding is, you could leave a bag out. You got your good, but if you leave it out for 5 years, it's going to degrade from THC or THCA to CBN. But the other part that they were talking about was when you're smoking like a joint or a pre-roll, when you get to the end of it, usually you get a little more sleepy towards the end because you're getting concentrated amounts of CBN towards the end because it starts building up. I had never even thought of that. Or is that true, or was I being lied to?
I mean,
Great.
I've read stuff like that before. Yeah,
Okay,
I haven't looked like super far into it, like personally, but I have read stuff like that before. Like, there's a lot of conversion that actually happens, like within like the plant itself, like based on heat, based on light, based on like the humidity, like that can like all of
sure.
those components change different things about the plant constantly. So like when we're talking about like the whole THCA THC thing, right? Like if I sell you a pre-roll inside the container, it's THCA. The second you light it on fire and you pull on it, you draw it, and you heat up all that flower, you're burning that acid chain off, and now you've got like delta 9
THC.
THC, right? So
Right.
there's like all the kinds of different like chemical reactions that happen, but like those same things that happen there happen inside your body, whether so like how we were talking earlier about gummies and how some people just like don't like gummies. They're just they're not it's just not the gummy people.
Not effective. Yeah.
Well, so that can be for multiple reasons, right? So generally speaking, when you're smoking it, it's going into your lungs. Your lungs have endocannabinoid receptors. It gets absorbed. You just blow the smoke out, and that process is over, right? You've already ingested it. So you can kind of feel how much, like how you feel it right
You
away.
can
So
gauge your high. Yeah.
right. So you can keep track of it. Where like with when you're
As
drinking,
opposed to an edible where it's like,
right. So, and like with drinking, it's the same thing. It's water soluble. So as you're drinking,
oh,
it's going to soak into like your mouth. It's going to soak into your digestive system as you're drinking it. Where with an edible, they say between 5 and 10% actually gets absorbed from the point that it enters your mouth till it gets to your liver. So like
okay,
while it's going through your digestive system, you're actually not absorbing that much of it. But
sure.
what happens is when it gets to your liver actually takes it, and the enzymes in your liver separate out the cannabinoids, and it puts them all together, and then these enzymes start to break they break the cannabis the THC down. Sorry,
Right,
THC.
to Delta
Break the
11
THC
or
down.
something. Yeah.
And then that THC actually turns into 11-hydroxy
Or
THC,
11. There you go.
which is essentially your body turning THC into like its own personal little distillate, and then it shoots it out into your endocannabinoidal system. So instead of it being like smoking, where you're able to kind of gauge what's going to happen and how you
Yeah,
feel,
you're just in
reaction
for
to
a
it.
ride.
Yep, you're just holding on, like
Take
buckle up.
your time. You can take more, you
Buckle
can't
up.
take less.
Right,
No, that's
right.
awesome. I heard also one thing I want you to check in, Bree, because you seem really smart. And I just get a lot of knowledge, and man, I'm not that smart. So I could look it up, but I don't know who to trust on Google. I feel like you are. I was informed today that Delta 8, okay, Delta 8 THC was figured out on accident, and it was because there were crops in Northern California, and when there was fires, they were fighting the fires with sulfur, and some of the sulfur caught the wind and ended up on cannabis crops. And all of a sudden, a few weeks later, they're looking at these cannabis crops like, wow, why are these plants like crystallized? And so, because I don't know if you've heard, but Delta 8 THC does happen naturally in the plant, so on and so forth. But it can happen in high amounts in the plant, but only if it's in the sulfur like is part of the growing median, and just very bizarre. Bree, can you check that out for me and get
I
back
mean,
to
I guess
me?
I've never heard that story before. That
Yeah, just see
sounds
if that's true. I
it
don't know
sounds
what to
like
believe anymore. It sounds a little bizarre, but the source is pretty credible.
it sounds like the
So
story of like how we ended up with hybrid plants, right? Like, you know
well,
how we
yeah,
ended up with
exactly right.
hybrids because
Accidents, man.
the feds decided to start flying their planes over the grows, and because the sativa plants were too tall, they started crossbreeding them to breed shorter plants, so that when the FBI flew over the top, they wouldn't see the plants growing under the trees.
This poor plant has been through it. This poor
I
plant
know,
has
right?
been through it.
So
Don
many
heard that
haters.
story. Okay, so it's out there. Ooh, great question, Camille. Why is it important to eat before taking a gummy?
Yeah, so your THC is going to bind to fats. So it's going to bind
Okay,
to protein, it's going to bind to fat. Like if whenever you consume a gummy or an edible, you're going to want to make sure that you eat something beforehand, and you're going to want to make sure it's something, even if it's just like a spoonful of peanut butter, like just something so that it has something to bind to so that it gets carried through your system most effectively.
gotcha. That makes
But a lot of
sense.
people think like, you know how you like drink on an empty stomach and you get more messed up? Like it's the
Yeah, people think
opposite.
that, but no.
It's the
Gotcha.
opposite with edibles. Like you need to have something in your stomach for it to be able to like process it
Kind of
correctly.
attached to. Right on.
Yep. Yep.
Good deal. I got one more question for you myself here. And that is, what's one thing you wish everyone understood about the relationship between hemp, the endocannabinoid system, and mental health?
Um, Probably just mostly that your endocannabinoidal system is its only job is to help you. Its only job is to create balance and to like create that homeostasis. So if you're dealing with symptoms, even like mental health or any like physical symptoms, like whatever, it's worth a try to come in and talk to somebody about it. Just to stop in, because the worst thing that can happen is we just provide you with a bunch of education and a bunch of information and
And you
you
don't want
can
to act on it,
try
but you
something.
should. Yeah. Nope. I
Yep.
think that's a great point. And
So I guess don't be afraid to like come in and talk to us. Like don't feel like, you know, you can't come in and ask us questions, because
sure.
like we're all really all of the people who work at Ignite can answer your questions. Like there
That's
isn't gonna
awesome.
you're not gonna walk in and talk to somebody who's gonna just be like, I don't know what to tell you.
Right. Well, and again, if you don't have a Unite by you, there should be somebody out there who cares that you should be able to find a
Yeah.
similar support from. Don't take a bad time at one store. You can't chalk that up and put that. And actually, somebody was complaining about Michigan, and I'm like, I understand in a sense because man, they're so busy up there. Like, yeah, you can ask them questions, but if you're in the
Sure.
drive-through, you're gonna be getting honked at, probably get flipped off. You know what I mean? Like,
Or
man, it
come
gets
find us
crazy up
at
there.
like
So
events. Like if you see us, like if you're at a fair or something and you see us have a tent, because we go to events all the time. We're all over the place. Like
I can attest to that.
right. So if you see us out and about or something, like come up and talk to us, because yeah, we're happy to answer questions, or like I said, even like if we have an opportunity to hand out samples or something, or try to hook you up with a product, or at least
Sure.
if nothing else, we can try to, like I said, kind of give that education piece
Educate.
so that you have
That's beautiful.
any idea of what's going on. Yeah.
Right. Way cool. We've got Camille's got a good question. Why should people go to Ignite rather than their local smoke shop? I heard Vapes R Us has a lot of cannabis, Bree.
Well, because we can guarantee all of our products. We one of our biggest like pride things is one, education, but also just like our quality of our product. Like I said earlier, I mean, we can prove like lab reports and be able to explain to you where our products come from and what they are and how they're made and what's in them, like our gummies being vegan, organic, gluten free. Like we're able to have like all of the, like we're able to 100% guarantee that right out of our
Sure.
products. We're not ordering something in from somewhere else.
Right. That's awesome. And I think that's, again, something that makes it really difficult for the people of Wisconsin to find places to trust, is because a lot of times those shortcuts can be overlooked, unfortunately. So, especially if you're able to find somebody like an Ignite Dispensary. And again, people get hung up on, and although I'm trying to remember, I was just in Ignite not too long ago, prices are very competitive. But at the
Mhm.
same time, especially when I'm talking about something I'm ingesting, I'm okay going to the grocery store and paying a couple dollars more on my grocery bill if I know where the products are coming from, as opposed to going to like the cheap section of Walmart and knowing I can get vegetables and whatever. But like, again, you hope they're doing and care about what they're doing, but do they? I don't know. If I can talk to somebody, like I go to Home Depot is like kind of my middle ground for like price and help. But like when I got a situation, right? When I got a situation at the house, I'll go to Ace Hardware and I know I'm going to pay more. But I know, Bree, when I leave there, I'm going to feel confident in the
Right.
part that I bought and where I'm going to put it in my house and what it's supposed to do. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to go back and that guy's going to help me like get through my situation. You know what I mean? Like we're talking about something we consume. So we can't always just go by price. And I'm not saying you guys are expensive by any means, but like, again, I think we just as a society, unfortunately, things get way out of like where do we start? And in my mind, it should come down to education and quality. And as long as the price fits what I feel is comfortable, like I don't think people would go to your place, ask questions, try a product, and not be happy with the price. And you know what I
Right.
mean? Like it kind of all goes together.
Well, if I can just
Truthfulness,
for
yes.
I would say if I can just for a second plug our rewards program. So we do have a
Sure.
rewards program. If you're a regular customer, you put your number in when you come in or whatever, and then we'll put points on there. It's based on the dollar value, so it's a dollar for point. And then we give you out like we'll reward you with like free grams of flour, free pre rolls, like free
That's
eighths
awesome.
of flour. We've got like buy
Sure.
one get one freeze on our gummies or edibles. I mean, there's like all kinds of like actual rewards that you get a bunch of free stuff all the time too if you're
That's
coming in
awesome.
regularly,
We all like free stuff. We all need some free
right?
stuff in our lives.
Who does
So
it?
no, that's awesome. Well, cool. We're gonna circle back real quick to waves of gravy. Can you explain the difference in effects between Delta 9 THC and traditional THC that is currently illegal?
Okay.
This is a
Um,
tricky one, tough one. I'm guessing you get
it's
this quite a bit.
I was gonna say it's not. I just sort of have like a spiel I normally say because at this point it's gotten to that point where I already have like a preloaded.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Felt that. Felt that.
Okay, so Delta Delta 8, Delta 9, and Delta 10 are your normal traditional THC. People I don't it's a confusing thing. So the only thing that differentiates those two on a molecular level, the only thing that actually makes them physically different is where the double bond is attached on the carbon. So the little balls that you see that are part of the big balls that are part of like the molecule when you see it, those
Yep,
are
the
going to be your
breakdown.
carbons. So those carbons are identified as deltas, and
Okay.
those deltas are numbered. So when the double bond is attached at the delta 9, it is delta 9 THC. If we move that delta bond back to the eighth delta, or that double bond back to the eighth delta, it's now delta 8 THC.
Gotcha.
We bump it over to the delta 10, we move it over to the 10th delta, now it becomes delta 10 THC. So delta 9 is THC, delta 8 is THC, delta 10 is THC.
Correct.
It's the same molecular structure. The only thing that physically changes about it is that double bond, which does make it adhere to our receptors differently. So
Sure.
that delta 9 is going to be the most most what's the word I want to use? Like a aggressor kind of, to your or to your receptor.
Sure.
So delta 9 is gonna be a little bit more aggressive than delta 8 is gonna be. So it's not gonna feel as intense as delta 9 does. And then delta 10 has a delta 10 has a different effect. Delta 10 is kind of it sort of changes the way it definitely has a different response to your endocannabinoidal system. But it's just
Sure.
the way that it fits into your receptors just slightly different. So your body responds in a different way because it's fitting into that receptor differently.
Fair.
Yeah. So when people say like, I don't want Delta 9, I just want THC. Well, Delta 9 is THC, but Delta 8 is THC and so is Delta 10. That's why we identify the difference. Because the
Gotcha.
government has said that Delta 9 THC is what's illegal. They're the ones
Sure.
who kind of made this convoluted, right? Like if they wouldn't have identified that
Right.
specifically,
It'd be a
most
lot
people wouldn't be
easier.
so confused.
100%. And then the difference between, the difference between THC and THCA is,
An acid chain. So there is an A or an acid form of all cannabinoids. So like you're gonna have a CBGA, you're gonna have a CBDA, there's a THCA. So like all these, they're essentially in layman's terms like an immature form of THC, right? It hasn't
okay,
it's underdeveloped. It hasn't completely finished developing yet. So one of two ways that acid chain can come off of the plant is through light or heat, generally speaking. So if you leave it on the plant long enough under the right amount of light, it'll eventually mature into just Delta 9, Delta 8, THC, like all of that just converts.
sure.
So when you're when you have the THCA, it's essentially just immature. And then you take the heat to it once you light it in your bowl or your joint or whatever, and it converts with the heat instead of the light.
Gotcha. Roger that. So essentially, because isn't flower in Michigan also THCA flower by definition?
Um, yeah.
Or Minnesota?
I
Well, no,
mean,
Minnesota
so
can't sell flower,
what I've
but
seen, yeah, like I just had somebody the other day be like, "Hey, I got this joint in Michigan. You want to smoke it with me?" And I was like, "Sure." So I scanned the QR code because always
yeah,
make sure you have the QR code. I scanned the QR code just to see what it was, and on the container it said 24% THC, and I was like, "Cool." So I like scanned it. It was like 22% THCA, and then it was like 1 point something percent Delta 9 THC, and I was like, "You literally paid a cannabis tax for like 1%." You know what I mean?
sure,
Like you literally could have just bought like like a joint from us, and it would have been the
sure.
same thing.
No, I got you. Well, and that's where it gets tricky too, because like I don't think people even 3 years ago, or especially when they wrote the Farm Bill, I don't think anybody had a clue that wait a second, flower isn't THC, like doesn't have a 24% THC in it, because if it did, I could eat it and get high, but you can't
Well, right. So I mean, so if you
because it
think
needs
about
to
it,
be
like,
heated, it needs to be cooked and edible, or it
right,
needs to be lit on fire to be smoked.
right,
So
right,
it's just, again,
right.
who
You
knows
think
what we'll be
about it
talking about?
like a pie chart, right? There's going to be like
Yeah.
bigger sections of THC versus bigger sections of CBD versus like all these microcannabinoids that you have too. So when you have a full spectrum plant, like just a full cannabis plant that hasn't been like where they have like adjusted anything, where it's just right out of the ground cannabis plant,
Hmm.
you're going to have that full spectrum of cannabinoids, right, from the CBG to the
Sure.
CBD and the CBGA and the THCA and the Delta 8 and the Delta, like all those things are like active little bits in there. It's just a
Sure.
matter of like what's most prevalent.
Who knows what we're going to be talking about in 5 years, Bree? Probably not Delta
Um,
9 or Delta 8. It's probably going to, well, who knows? Who knows? This plant is crazy awesome. But again, it's as like anything, the more you can learn, the more we can try to use this medicine and try to learn how to better help those affected. But man, it sounds like you've had some awesome success stories in helping folks. And again, that's really what got me started in all this. And we as a community just need to stick together to protect the integrity of this plant, to make sure that folks are doing everything they can to get that quality product out there. I appreciate everything Ignite's doing. I can tell you again, I think I've met probably the majority of the folks that work for that outfit, from the growers to the people making edibles to the guys running it. And I can tell you, integrity is not something that I take lightly when it comes to, like, I respect the heck out of that. And I just hope that we somehow, folks like Ignite Dispensary, the people that are helping that thing stay moving and doing its thing. I just hope that I hope to whoever you pray to, that when we talk about legalization, folks like that are spoken to, and try to understand what things should look like. And just appreciate everything you do for them, Bree. I think it's a really neat partnership that you have with them. And again, that just speaks to the kind of folks that we're talking about when it comes to Ignite Dispensary.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to chat about not just
Yeah.
like myself on here, but Ignite.
No, for sure. And if it's okay with you, Bree, I noticed quite a few people tuning in and a lot of good questions. So I'm thinking we might have to like break down maybe like a terpene of the month and just do a quick like 15-minute episode here or 15-minute episode there or something. If
Sure.
there's anything I can do to help facilitate the knowledge you have, let's maybe tap into Camille, see what her thoughts are, and
For
Tim
sure.
and them. Really appreciate what you bring to the table and how you're trying to help the community around you.
Yeah, 1,000%. I honestly, any excuse to talk about cannabis, and I'll take it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Heather agrees, and Heather is the OG. She's awesome. So if Heather agrees, she speaks for everybody. So thank you everybody for stopping out. Heads up, if you want to check out Let's Legalize Wisconsin 2.0 on Facebook, that is the official backup / going to be launching new page for Let's Legalize Wisconsin. The other page is suspended. I don't know for how long. I don't know how that stuff works. Got zucked hardcore. So bear with me. I'm now able to finally post into the groups. So Wisconsin Weed Warriors is our private group. If you're not on there on Facebook, we are hopefully going to be launching Discord this weekend. The beta is going really well, and that'll be a great place for plugging and learning information about terpenes, about dispensaries will be able to talk to their customers, which would be awesome because that's one of the things that sucks about social media. There's just so much knowledge that we can't get in the hands of the people. So shout out to a couple of you on here tonight who have been helping with the Discord. Sorry I was sick, but we're ready to rock and roll. We're back to doing things how we should. Ignite Fest 2025. What? I heard that should be a thing.
It's in the works.
Okay. Well, get me some dates because I'll be there. I know some other guys.
It's in the works. I know
Yeah,
we're
right.
shooting, I think, for summer for that. So it's in the
Okay.
works.
Right on. Looking forward to it. Go Bree, go Bobby, go Camille. Appreciate you helping out this evening as well. Again, thank you everybody. Let's Legalize Wisconsin 2.0 on Facebook. We're gonna hopefully get that thing up and running shortly. Otherwise, you'll be seeing me, folks. We ain't going nowhere. So much love. Have a good night, everybody. We're out of here. If I can find the video, and there it is.